Look at the top of your chicken's head right now. That red, fleshy crest is called a comb. And chances are you've never really thought about it beyond that's just what chickens look like. But here's the thing. There isn't just one type of comb. There are several distinct types. They're controlled by specific genes, and some of them have been used by scientists for over a century to study how genetics actually works. By the end of this video, you'll never look at a chicken's head the same way again, and you'll also understand why that comb might be the single most honest thing about a chicken's health. Let's start with the one you've definitely seen, the single comb. This is the classic tall, jagged-edged red comb that stands straight up, the one most people picture when they think chicken. According to genetics references on poultry, the single comb is actually the genetically default type. It only shows up when a chicken doesn't carry either of the two major comb-altering genes we're about to talk about. Breeds like the Leghorn are well known for their prominent single combs. And here's something worth knowing. Because the single comb only happens with one specific gene combination, it's actually the easiest comb type for breeders to identify with certainty. If a chicken has a single comb, you instantly know its genetic makeup at that location. No testing required. This also means single combs are useful for backyard keepers in a more everyday way. Because the comb is large and fully exposed, it's often the easiest type to check at a glance for color and texture, which, as we'll get to later, can tell you a lot about how a bird is feeling on any given day. Now here's where things get interesting. The pea comb looks completely different. Instead of one tall blade, it's small, low, and bumpy, made up of three little ridges running front to back. According to research published on the genetics of chicken combs, this comb type is caused by a specific mutation in a gene called SOX5, which changes how the comb tissue develops before the chicken even hatches. But here's the part that connects to something practical. Researchers have proposed that the smaller size of the pea comb helps with temperature regulation. In hot, humid climates, a smaller comb means less surface area exposed to extreme heat. And in cold climates, it works the opposite way. A smaller comb means less exposed tissue that can get frostbitten. That's part of why breeds develop for harsh winters, like the Buckeye we talked about in a previous video, tend to have small pea combs. If you're choosing breeds based on your climate, the comb type is actually one of the first things worth checking. A chicken with a tall single comb in a cold climate is statistically more likely to deal with frostbite on those exposed tips than one with a compact pea comb, simply because of how much tissue is out there in the cold. Next up is the rose comb, and this one has a surprisingly important place in the history of science. The rose comb is low, rounded, and covered in small, bumpy texture, often with a little spike pointing backward at the rear. According to genetics research, this comb type is caused by a structural rearrangement on one of the chicken's chromosomes. Here's the historical twist. Comb shape in chickens, including the rose comb, was one of the traits used back in 1902 by scientist William Bateson as one of the earliest demonstrations of Mendelian inheritance in animals, meaning chicken combs literally help prove some of the foundational rules of genetics we still use today. It's worth pausing on that for a second. Long before DNA sequencing existed, before anyone could look at a genome, scientists were able to work out predictable inheritance patterns just by breeding chickens with different comb shapes and tracking which traits showed up in the offspring. So next time you see a rose comb, you're looking at a trait that helps shape how scientists understand inheritance in general. Now remember the Polish chicken from one of our earlier videos? The one with the huge feathered crest covering its eyes? Underneath all those feathers, Polish chickens actually have a small V-shaped comb, sometimes called a duplex comb. According to genetics resources on chicken comb types, this V-shape is controlled by yet another gene variant, separate from the rose and pea genes we just covered. It's a good example of how comb genetics and the showier features, like crests, can be controlled by completely different genes working independently. The big fluffy crest gets all the attention, but tucked underneath it is its own small genetic story most people never notice. And this actually highlights something important about how chicken genetics work in general. The traits we notice first, feathers, color, size, aren't necessarily connected to the traits underneath. A chicken can be dramatically unusual on the outside while having a completely ordinary comb hidden beneath it, and vice versa. And then there's a walnut comb, which is exactly what it sounds like. A comb shaped roughly like a walnut shell setting on top of the head. According to poultry genetics references, this happens when a chicken inherits the dominant versions of both the rose comb gene and the pea comb gene at the same time, combining both traits into one comb shape. So zooming out, every comb type we've covered, single, pea, rose, V-shaped, walnut, comes down to combinations of just a couple of genes. But combs aren't just decoration. According to genetics and poultry science sources, the comb plays a real role in regulating body temperature, and its size and color can also be a visible indicator of a chicken's overall health. In fact, keepers are often told to check comb color as a basic health signal. A comb that suddenly turns pale, purple, or dull compared to its usual bright red can be one of the earliest visible signs that something is wrong with a bird, often before any other symptoms show up. And finally, here's something that takes the comb from interesting genetic trait to actual dating profile. In red jungle fowl, the wild ancestor of the domestic chicken, research has shown that comb size in roosters is one of the main signals hens use when choosing a mate. According to studies published in journals like Behavioral Ecology and Animal Behavior, comb size in roosters is directly linked to testosterone levels, overall health, and dominant status. Roosters with larger, brighter combs tend to win more fights and rank higher in the social order, and hens appear to use that information, preferring to mate with roosters that have bigger, more vividly colored combs. But here's the twist that makes this even more interesting. One study found that comb size and comb color don't always point in the same direction when it comes to fertility. Roosters with the smallest, reddest combs actually had the highest percentage of viable sperm, meaning size alone doesn't tell the whole story, and color may carry its own separate signal about a rooster's condition. So that red crest on a rooster's head isn't just there to look impressive. It's a running broadcast of his hormone levels, his health, and according to the research, possibly even his fertility, being read in real time by every hen in the flock. So that red thing on top of your chicken's head isn't just there for looks. It's a genetic fingerprint, a temperature regulator, a health indicator, and in some cases, literally part of the history of how we understand genetics itself. Next time you look at your flock, see if you can spot which comb type each one has, and take a second look at its color too. If this kind of thing is interesting to you, hit the like button. It helps more people find this channel. And hit subscribe because every week we break down another part of the chicken world that's hiding in plain sight.